No, he's
Different
he's
too.
on vacation.
Specialized.
Rolling.
He's with that has one source place.
Good evening. Welcome to the Oregon City Council regular meeting for December 19th, 2022. The time now is 7:02, and we will open the meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Ms. Evans, would you take a roll call of councilmen present?
Mr. Davish?
Here.
Mr. Drake?
Here.
Mr. Horniak?
Here.
Mrs. Powell? Here. Mr. Reeves?
Here.
Mr. Wallensack?
Here.
Mr. Zale?
Here. Also present at tonight's meeting is Mayor Michael Safarian, City Administrator Joel Major, Clerk of Council Tina Evans, Law Director Melissa Papura, Public Service Director Paul Roman, Chief of Police Brandon Bagan, Fire Chief Clayton O'Brien, Assistant Fire Chief Mark Mullins, Building and Zoning Commissioner Jim Gilmore, and Assistant Finance Director Nick Brown. Council, the first order of business tonight will be the opening of a public hearing. And this is an application Z-814-22 for zoning change from A1 Agricultural District to a C1 Commercial Industrial District on the properties described as 4315 Corduroy Road, parcel number 44-11277, consisting of approximately 9 acres, and 4107 Corduroy Road, parcel 44-10204, consisting of approximately 23 acres. A zoning change from A1 Agricultural District to Advanced Manufacturing District on property described as 4713 Corduroy, parcel 44-10114, consisting of approximately 29 acres. And a zoning change from a mixed-use A1 Agricultural District to a C1 Commercial Industrial District to Advanced Manufacturing District on a portion of property described as 700 North Wind Road, parcel number 44-09984, consisting of approximately 32 acres. This zoning change is being initiated by the City of Oregon. And I will open up this public hearing at 7:04. Mr. Gilmer, is there anything you would like to state about this?
Only the Plan Commission recommend for approval, which is part of the process, and this is the final leg of it where it comes to City Council for final approval.
Correct. Thank you. Mr. Mayor, anything to add?
No, with approval from the Planning Commission, it would merely take a majority vote of council or a simple majority also to override it. To alter it in any manner, shape, or form would take 6 votes of council to make any alterations on this as it's presented before you.
Mr. Major, you have anything to add?
Yes, Mr. President. Thank you. I'm just going to reiterate a few points that I had made during the Planning Commission meeting. The first is that the Oregon Economic Development Foundation is and has been working on RFIs to Jobs Ohio, and submitting them to Jobs Ohio for leads that fit our community for industrial use and for these properties. Number 2, this rezoning has really been the plan all along. I know I've only been here 2 months, but in researching the history of what's been happening over here, this has been in process, so to speak, for a very long time. And I'll get into that in a second here, but one of the biggest points to be made here is that the investment has already been made. So if you look at the map on the screen, you can see where Windscape Road has actually been connected. That was a project that was finished this year. The utilities were added in this project to be robust enough for an industrial use. So the investment has been made, and that was through an EDA grant. I think everybody was aware of that. So it went through a very public process to get to this point. This also conforms with the citywide master plan. And in the citywide master plan, it has all of these properties in this area. The future land use planning map has this area listed as industrial. The last point I wanted to make was that, time is of the essence, and this is my opinion because, for a few reasons, but, the main ones are that the RFIs are coming out now. I mean, this hasn't been slowing down, so getting, and RFI in the economic development world, stands for Request for Information. And when you get leads that come in, industries and site selectors are looking for sites to locate to that fit them. So the RFIs, and anybody that's lived in the recession of '08 and after that knows that how precious these leads can be and how back then there was just so few of them. So I guess the opportunity is now to act on it. The other thing I'll say is that one of the questions that always come up from site selectors, always, is the property zoned for this use? So, getting ahead of the game, a lot of times these site selectors are looking at shaving time. So anytime that you can, cut their time in going through a certain process, they certainly appreciate it and take a harder look at what you have to offer and what sites are available to them. So those are the points that I wanted to make. I brought those up at the last planning commission meeting and wanted to make sure everybody was aware of those points. Happy to ask any questions or answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Major.
Mr. President,
Mr. Reeves?
thank you. By any chance of the imagination, do we have the colorful map to look at of where the properties that we're talking about changing?
Yeah, I think.
There, thank you. And the parcels that we are talking about will be, which ones, please? I mean, I know,
Yes.
but just for,
Yes, sir. So the property to the west, that's the 4315 Corduroy Road, is owned by the Oregon Economic Development Foundation. And the recommendation is to rezone it as a CI, which is conforms to everything else that's in orange right now. So it fits and matches the zoning that it would be connecting to. 4315, correct. The next one is 4701 Corduroy. Again, that would, the recommendation is to make that a CI as well and fit the rest of it. The other two parcels, that would be 700 Wynn and 4713 Corduroy. The recommendation is to change the zoning to advanced manufacturing, which is the new zoning designation that council had created last year.
in the 4713? Is that 13?
Yeah, 4713 and 700 Wynn would be advanced manufacturing. So 4701 and 4713 are owned privately at this time. I believe there's an option already on 4701, but not on 4713. And 700 Wynn is owned by the Oregon Economic Development Foundation.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Reeves. Thank you, Mr. Major. Council, do you have any other questions at this moment?
Mr. President,
Mr. Horniak?
two questions if I can. The first being, in the move from agricultural CI onto the two properties, the 4013 or 4315 Corduroy, and then in the other one where we're looking at moving those into commercial industrial versus advanced manufacturing, what's the reasoning behind not going to advanced manufacturing on those two parcels?
Great question. The one to the west, I think, is a little more obvious. If you change the zoning there to advanced manufacturing, that would be considered spot zoning, which is a no-no in the zoning industry, so to speak. But you want to have conforming uses all around if you can, whenever possible. And keeping the one parcel, the 4701 as CI, we had talked about that internally. The CI actually allows for more flexibility in allowing developers to develop the land and whichever means they would that fit them. And the advanced manufacturing on the other side here, at the 4713 and 700 Wynn, being that it's on Wynn and very visible, and that 4713 abuts some of the residential side and this area could be the advanced manufacturing, would allow that softer look that the advanced manufacturing designation calls for. So there are farther setbacks from other properties. There's, just a softer feel. It doesn't look as industrial. So that's why it creates a little bit more of a buffer to Wynn and the other residential properties. And a little bit on Corduroy as well, but mostly for Wynn and the residential properties around it. So just adding that setback and softer feel to give it a little bit more of a buffer. That was the logic behind why that was.
Okay,
Set
follow-up
up.
question to that, and I do have one additional question, Mr. President. So assuming that of what you just said, 4701 Corduroy would also have the same, see if I'm orienting this right, southern border versus agricultural, would it not make sense for advanced manufacturing in that particular parcel as well?
It could as well. It could go either way, just because then it all matches on the one side. But again, the reasoning was just to allow for the flexibility, since the remainder of it to the west of it was already CI. So that parcel right there was a toss up, but we felt it was best to have it as a CI rather than advanced manufacturing.
All right, fair enough. And the second question that I have, if I may, Mr. President, is, so on the parcels in there, one of them is owned and controlled by the Oregon Economic Development Foundation. You said there's another one that we have option on, and we're working on the two others. Obviously, the one that we're working on as far as an agreement with the landowner, and the other, are they in support of the rezoning? Obviously, there'll be people here to speak for and against as they're choosing to. Are they all on board with the concept of changing zoning?
The one property owner at 4701 is in favor of this.
Okay.
They have an option on the property. The other one is aware of the zoning change and had no objection.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much, Mr. President and Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Horniak. Thank you, Mr. Manager. Council, any other questions at the moment?
Mr. President,
Mr. Drake.
Mr. Major, could you explain, I know months ago we talked about this when we voted on it. What's the difference with like the lighting, the landscaping, and like the architect of the building between the two?
That's a good question. Jim, did you want to answer that?
I'll try. And we have larger setbacks in the advanced manufacturing. There's a height limitation of 60 feet, which is considerably different from the CI, where the smokestacks, for example, are exempt in the CI, where they are not in the advanced manufacturing. We have landscaping, increased landscaping. We have rules on lighting. We have very strict rules on the architectural detail, which lists several elements that they can use, and limitations on other ones that are not so that are not desirable with the softer look. But those in general, there's a lot of things in there, but in general, that's the differences.
Mr. Gilmore,
Yes.
the current, I know there's Fresenius in there, and another one called, I don't even want to guess it. I know they do medical things too. True Blue, thank you. Do you know are they in the advanced manufacturing or the other?
Well, there's a couple things to consider. They would be an allowable use in the advanced manufacturing. The buildings as they sit would not comply with advanced manufacturing. So there's two different things to look at, is the use of the property, and then after the use, how the building looks and is arranged on the parcel. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Drake. Thank you, Mr. Gilmore.
Mr. President,
Mr. Walenzak.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. I want to kind of expand out in our thought process, and I know City Administrator Mazur had talked about looking at master plan and land use stuff. When you look at the far west of this map, there are 4 bowling alley lots that are immediately north of the property that we are looking to rezone today. In the grand scheme of things, where do we go after this? Shouldn't we, I know this is also going to take place today, and maybe I'm getting a little ahead of myself, but should we look at seeking out potential options on other properties on this map also to gain maybe a larger area that we can market for a company that would want to come in, as opposed to just limit ourselves to one piece at a time? I just want to, that may not be discussion for tonight, but it's a discussion that I think we really need to look at, potentially working with our Economic Development Foundation to seek out options on parcels and kind of get a grand scheme of things where we're going, as opposed to the one parcel at a time.
Thank you, Mr. Walenzak.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor. Mayor.
Well, I'll start, and Mr. Major. We've had people that own different parcels there that have expressed interest in just that. So until we get a point where we get enough assembled that we would come, or we would help them through the process. And those would likely be those individuals applying for a zoning change versus us as having options on properties. We don't have options on any of those other properties, so it's a little awkward. So we would help them through the process if they were interested, and that would be part of our master plan update too, to try to address those concerns. And I know Mr. Mazur might expand on it a little bit.
I just think it would be for us on a marketing side, from a city standpoint, if we say, oh, we have not only this, but we have an additional 50 acres of.
Of course, we have to have those people not be an objection to that.
Well, I
also,
understand,
too.
but I think it's a discussion with those people that we should at least
And,
reach
you
out
know,
to and attempt to have.
We've had some of them come to us. We have gone to some of those.
Okay.
So
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Walenzak. Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Major.
Thank you, Mr. President. One thing I'll say is that's great planning, and that's a great strategy. The purpose for rezoning this now is to address the needs of right now and the leads of right now. Not to,
And I understand,
Sure,
that's why I
but-
say I'm jumping ahead of it.
no, that's great planning though, because Alec Thompson is here today, and he's a lot of these, or all of them, all of the options are any options that we would have on properties, and we wouldn't really have it. It would be through the Economic Development Foundation. So
Understand.
any interested parties that are out there should be talking with the Oregon Economic Development Foundation to see if there's a chance to assemble or amass other options on land to, for future marketing of this industrial area. So, and then, that's for land assembly, but the zoning right now is just because of the opportunities that are out there right now. So.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Walenzak. Mayor.
I was going to follow up with one thing. Years ago, I'm going to go back into the 90s. People with industrial ventures would come around and then look at land and go into the rezoning process. Now it's so costly for them to get it invested in an area and then have it possibly denied as a zoning. They won't even consider looking. So if we are not set, as Mr. Mazur brought up before, with proper zoning, we become not even a consideration for most of the projects. So it's something that the world changed. The way site selectors come require zoning already be in order, or pretty much in order. So we're just trying to catch up, really.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. At this time, I would like to open this up.
Tim, Mr. President,
I'm sorry.
I do have
Sorry.
one
Go ahead.
follow-up, if I may. Kind of building on Mr. Wong's point, the portions that are in the orange, and I'm gonna fail the eye test because I cannot read the numbers in the boxes. But immediately to the left of the green, I'll say chunk on the right, those two shorter properties in orange, are those currently occupied and developed? I'm trying to orient my mind exactly what it is. What in those sections of orange between the green, what if any of that is developed?
Nothing,
Mr. President.
nothing.
Mr.
Okay.
Major.
Nothing between Blue Heron.
Nothing between those, but consistent with our 2020 plan, that proposed zoning or use was potential commercial or advanced manufacturing as we would see it today. Fair?
Some
Correct.
sort of industrial.
Okay,
Correct.
very good. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Horniak. Thank you, Mr. Major. Okay, council, at this time, I'd like to open up this hearing to public comment. Is there anybody here that would like to speak in favor of this zoning change? Okay, did you want to speak? Are you for or against it at this moment? Well, I'm asking people if they're for it. I'd like to have them come forward first. Yes, I know you did. I know you did. And in a public hearing like this, if someone raises their hands and wants to speak about this, I have no problem with that, Ruth. Okay. Come on up. Come on up.
My name is Ruth Price. I live at 5255 Seaman Road, across the street. I have a question, Mayor. How much property does the city own, vacant property for development? How much property as a citizen of Oregon do we own?
I don't have that figure right before me. We could certainly get that for you.
We have a considerable amount.
We have what do you say, 70 acres? Yeah, I don't want to tell you something wrong. We wish we had a considerable amount.
What I'm asking is,
We do own the parcel that is right there. I can't read.
700 Win, North
Yeah,
Win,
yeah.
and
Well, that's the only one we own.
4315.
Are you talking all the property? Or we have recreational property here on this complex, but then other than that,
development property.
development property, like,
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
I'm sorry. Mrs. Price, are you asking what properties do we own that are currently undeveloped?
I'm asking about what undeveloped property does the city own for future development?
development as for commercial,
Right,
industrial.
commercial.
You're not talking about this parkland.
No.
All right.
We would have to get
The
list,
reason I'm
correct.
asking is I can't understand your thinking as city leaders that have been put in your positions by the citizens, why we have to be property owners. I think if someone is interested in buying a property for commercial, they should have to follow the process. There's property that the city has owned that it's been vacant for years. There's a big piece of property down at the corner of Cedar Point and Wynn Road.
That is
That,
15
I
acres.
don't understand that, and I don't understand this because number one, you gave permits for all those new houses on Wynn Road. Now, if you lived in one of those houses, would you want industrial across the road from you?
Well,
The
Ruth,
reason I'm asking is, I live over here.
I know exactly where you live.
The whole piece of property behind me is farmland
Mhm.
that abuts up to Corduroy Road. It's been zoned for development since I was a small girl. The lots, it's all plotted out. Now, if you're here, what's going to keep you from encroaching behind my house? What's going to keep you from not wanting to buy that huge piece of property? You could put your lithium plant back there. See what I mean? I
That's-
don't understand why we have to be in the business of buying property.
We don't have an enormous amount of property. I tell you, I wish we had more, but we do not. We can't afford to buy a bunch of property. But just like I stated before, if we do not have property that is zoned a certain way, the site selectors that are interested in putting up projects won't even consider us. And we always try to do a balancing act to have commercial development of some sort, whether it is retail in our Navarre Avenue corridor or industrial here, to help subsidize all the houses that are in here and pay a good deal of the revenues that the city has. So people expect us to do what we can to develop the city in a reasonable manner. Those houses that were on Wynn Road, especially the ones that are on the east side of the road, when they came in for permits, we told each and every one of those that property was expected right here where we're changing the zoning now to be industrial property. It faced the refinery and all the industrial property in the city. I think reasonable minds would look at that property and wouldn't expect it to become parkland or subdivisions. People wouldn't build houses there. It was adjoining what was already existing industrial property. So if we are going to continue with industrial ventures, it's really the only part of the city where we can do that. And what would stop any other thing from happening, like the property behind you? Well, just trying to be practical. Where is the best location for industrial property? And I can make a good case, and I think everyone up here can make a good case. If we're going to have industrial property, this is it. This is probably the most reasonable place to have industrial property adjoining industrial property. And
But
so,
why do we have to be an industry city?
well, because
Because it
why
said
do
in
we
the
have to
paper
be?
today
Why do
that
we?
you're short on revenue. The press, I just brought it. I took it out of my mailbox.
Almost. I think
You're
you'll find-
talking about the refineries, that the revenue isn't as much, but yet the city does a tremendous amount of spending.
Of course.
I live
course we
across
do.
the road. I see the new equipment and all the things that you're buying.
Mhm.
We all have budgets.
And we try
Maybe
to
the
live within
city
ours.
should consider budgeting more. Do we have to pay taxes on the property that the city owns?
The taxes, like for here, no. Some parcels we do, they're few and far between. But some parcels we do have to pay taxes on.
Parcels, we have to pay Lucas
Some-
County
some of them.
taxes, correct?
Some of them, not nearly all of them. I think there's only a small portion of them that do. These parcels technically are not owned by the city either. They're owned
Except
by
one.
the Economic Development
Yeah,
Foundation.
right. And then those we're taxed on them on a rate at how the land is used, and they're being used until they're developed as agricultural. So it's very minimal what we do pay on those until the time they're developed. And when they're developed, someone else will own them, and we won't be paying them.
Because I know, I believe it was last year, there was someone that wanted to buy the property on the northwest corner of Corduroy and Wynn. And the city had bought it out from under him. Next to Jay Shore School.
Or Corduroy and Seaman, you mean?
No, Seaman and Wynn.
Yes, even in when, yeah, yeah.
The
I
north,
understand.
the
Yes, we did,
northwest
yeah.
corner, you bought.
Yes,
You overbid him, and then you wanted to sell it to him for more money?
no,
That was in the paper.
that's not true. We purchased that property and we likely have a road improvement project going that what we paid for the land, if we would have tried to purchase right away to put it in, we'd have spent more than we purchased it for now. And no, we were not trying to sell it to anybody for more. We can't just pick figures out of the sky and sell something to our friends for a better price than
I
whatnot.
didn't
There's a section of that
I
that
didn't
we
say it was
likely.
for a friend. I'm
We-
just saying, I don't think personally, and I know there's people here that agree, that should not be in the real estate business. Besides, the industrial area is north of us. And you're just encroaching further and further to the south.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair that some people aren't for the city increasing the revenues that they get industrially. A lot of them are. A lot of people want the city to grow industrially so we can pay our bills.
Mhm.
And those same people, a lot of them would like to see us have good snowplows versus rundown ones so we can take care of the streets. All our equipment, we try to pride ourselves on having very good equipment. We don't think that's a unwise expenditure of money.
The
you
city
do.
owns where Kmart was, correct?
That we do.
And how long has that been sitting there?
Well, it's been sitting there since we purchased it. And like you said, you weren't for developing industrially. We know industrial is how we pay our bills here. Retail is very difficult for us, especially in these times. So it's going to be we're going to have some patience to develop it, but we have a lot of interest. We have what's called a tax increment finance project for there that will will bring in a lot of money. We will get not only a return on that money, but you could even say we would profit greatly, especially once it develops, and then the income from all the working folks that are there. We believe it's still going to be a very good investment for us, something that you will be proud of. Hopefully, we'll all be proud of. But we got to have patience. We can't be like some cities and develop. We don't want to be like a Fallen Timbers and build something only for things to shut down. We're very cautious at how we proceed there so that when things do come, they'll be successful. We
But
didn't want
excuse me, but you were talking about eyesores. Where Freeze Restaurant was, that is a huge eyesore and it sits there. Kmart, where that was, that's a huge eyesore, and that's as you come into the city. I
It
mean,
is.
yes, that's your responsibility. That's as you're coming into the city.
Ruth, we can't make miracles happen. We don't have a magic
But
wand.
if
We
you,
do.
if you took the time that you're putting into this and putting it into a commercial problem on Navarre Avenue,
There's not one
I-
day that we let that set going idle. We work on it daily. We work on it, a
Mhm.
big group of us. It's not an easy venture for us to develop retail.
mhm.
We believe we will eventually do that. And like I said, we believe it'll be something you'll be proud of, we'll be proud of. But we're going to have patience. If we let that go, and someone else purchased it, we would not have any of that property that goes all the way to Pickle Road, would not have been able to be developed, and it would have sat somewhat dormant for who knows how long. We
Excuse
took
me.
advantage.
You and I had a conversation about the Kmart property. I believe it was last year, maybe the year before.
Yeah,
And you told me you had it all plotted out, what kind of stores were going to be there, because I approached you about a big box store, a retail
Mhm.
store that people could shop at. And you said, no, we've got this all planned, it's ready to go. That was either last year or the year before. And that hasn't happened. I mean, it was supposedly, you said, it is all planned. I'm not making this up. I mean, that was,
I would not say you did. We had desires for a lot of things. The market changes. Since the COVID thing, the market changed a lot. We had interest that people wanted to put retail outlet, mercantile stores there. That changed. People are not building those anymore. People like Amazon's taken over that business. We were kind of fortunate that didn't happen. Had we had a Marshalls and a TJ Maxx come in there, they would only in a few years gone out of business. We'd have been trying to fill those stores with something else. So we're finding.
if you go on Route 20, going,
They're a place, Route 20 is a place that's known to develop retail very easily.
they
got
are developing
they got
retail
10
right
times,
and left.
they have 10 times the retail traffic there that we do. They develop retail very easily out there because of the traffic they have. We don't. We always knew it would be difficult for us, yet we were not going to pass on that and have it set, have nothing forever. So we took the chance to purchase that property with patience, and we believe we will develop it. There will always be people that will come here and critique us about it. I still think it was a great investment, a great choice to purchase that property and have the opportunity to develop something versus never have the opportunity ever again, because that's what would have happened had we not purchased it.
I believe
So-
Mr.
so I'm still
Zale is
proud of
getting
it.
a little irritated. I'm taking too long, so I should
No,
probably.
it's fine, Ms. Price. It's, we're
But I
a little,
do-
we're a little off the topic though, and I appreciate what you want to talk about. But I do want to give
have
other
a
people an
comment
opportunity
for
here.
Mr. Major.
I want to give other people an opportunity to speak
I
about this
just,
zoning.
I was surprised when I read, because I had not been coming to council meetings, I had a health issue. But I was surprised when I heard that they hired someone from Napoleon. Do you live here in Oregon?
I do.
You do. Where do you live?
I live off of Bay Shore Road.
Okay. Do you live in Eagles Landing?
No.
Oh, okay. Because the last I knew, you did not live in Oregon.
No, I live in Oregon.
Okay. Well, I hope that you all give this a lot of thought
Yeah.
before you turn this into a disaster for the poor people that have invested in these beautiful homes across the street. I personally would be very upset. I'm upset with the thought that it's encroaching on the back of my property. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Price. For the audience, is there anybody else that wishes to come up and speak in favor of this zoning change? Mr. Thompson?
Thank you, Mr. President. My name is Alec Thompson. I'm the Executive Director at the Oregon Economic Development Foundation. I just want to hit on 2 points that the mayor, Mr. Mazur, said. We work through these RFIs, and as Mr. Mazur alluded to, they come in daily at this rate, sometimes multiple a day. They're very attractive projects with high-paying jobs. And the two things that this zoning change does that all site selectors and potential clients want to see, one, mitigate risk. If they know that these parcels are already zoned for change, then that's one less step they have to take. And two, they want to increase their timeline speed, and is of the essence of these people. Every day they're not building their project, they're losing money or the opportunity to gain more money. So again, with those 2 points, this zoning change is very helpful, not only for the Economic Development Foundation, but for the city of Oregon. That's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson. Is there anybody else that wishes to speak in favor of this zoning change? Is there anybody that would like to come speak against this zoning change? Yes, sir. Please come to the podium, state your name clearly and your address, please, for the record. Good evening.
My name's Craig Lattimore. I live at 520 North Lalendorf. And I told you where I live, and with the show of hands, does everybody up here live in Oregon? And who doesn't, raise your hand for us, please.
What was the question?
Or everybody lives in Oregon. Everyone
Do
you
we
guys
have
live
to?
at
We
home.
have to.
Well, I'd like to know that
Elected
you know where
members
I
do.
live. And
Elected
I've
members
never
do.
been to one of these, so let's just
Okay.
keep rolling. We're not going to split hairs
Yes.
because you don't want to tell us where you live.
Right.
I am not trying to get in the way of growth and prosperity. But sir, your little bowling alley you're talking about, that happens to me where I live.
Okay.
I live right there on that west-hand corner down there by, I believe it's 4315. My parcel that I'm inquisitive is 11277. I do have photographs. So living over here on North Lalendorf, we've been there about 5 years. I pay approximately $5,500 a year in real estate taxes, about $4,000 in payroll tax because my company's not in Oregon. In order for me to have to pay those bills, I got to get a good night's sleep and I have to be able to have a good frame of mind. So how did I know so much about True Blue? They're right behind me. Beep, 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 from 2 a.m. till 6 a.m. Can't even have the windows open in the back of our house. Our children, grandchildren can't have the windows open because Auto Neum, who was a company that was only going to be a building that was going to be a warehouse, no manufacturing, now manufactures cooling fans down that whole wall facing North Lalendorf that run 24/7. Can't even keep the windows open. Beautiful oil plant, Menthol plant down the street. If I'd have known that was going to be there when I bought this home, I would have never moved here. Nice people, great people, noisy, smells. Can't keep the windows open. So here we are now, $300,000 house. We can't even keep our windows open at night. Now you guys want to take my little corner of the world, last piece of rural property that we have that my grandchildren love to go out and watch the deer eat and watch the snakes and the eagles and everybody else. It's only 9 acres. Please keep that in mind because one of you guys, I think it was you, Joel, mentioned a buffer. That's what we're talking about tonight. I need a buffer. Keep that 9 acres resident or rural agricultural. The people that the site selectors, is that what you guys all like? They probably like to see a cornfield going into work every now and then. And I'd really like to see that. Now, I do have some photographs I could drop off there and you guys could run them down to show you. Because if you don't know this, see this corner right here? That's where my barn, I have 2 barns on my property. I'm about 500 feet from that corner. So one of these people that select to buy and build some building on this property, they could potentially butt right up against my property. And I'm not talking, that's great, but I got another photo of all the gifts that Auto Neum gives us every day from their dumpsters, all the cardboard that blows in my yard. People had to take their breaks, eat their lunches in the street. All that debris flies right in our yard, right in my pond. And I get to pick that up every day, bunches of it. Every one of you is welcome to come to 520 North Lalendorf day or night and sit in my yard and listen to it. You're going to say, boy, this is a great piece of land. What a wonderful little place. Dream home. Bowling alley guy wants to buy us out. I'm usually not this passionate, but I grew up in East Toledo and I worked and clawed my way to the top to buy a home that I thought was going to be my last stop, my last journey. Talked to a couple people who live in my neighborhood. Said, you guys already got your mind made up. I'm just going to be wasting my breath coming over here and talking to you. The last thing I want to do is get on anybody's bad side. All I'm asking for is a little reprieve on 4411277. It's a small little 9 acres. It could be the last place maybe you guys can build on. My family, my grandchildren, we love it. I got to sleep at night. I need to have, my mind to go to work to pay my taxes. And if you guys build something back there, it's going to be awful. And I don't really want to move. I love the fire department. They've been to my house. That man right there. Remember my truck fire, sir? Beautiful. Got there in time to save the basement, huh? Just because of the location. Police force is great. We've had a couple alarm failures, didn't charge me for it. I fell 20 feet back in April onto a cement floor. You sent 2 paramedics, 2 trucks out to take me to intensive care for a week and a month in a hospital. I love Oregon. I'm just asking you to please consider this little piece of parcel here and let us keep Utopia. After I die, you guys can put Davis Bessie there if you want. I'm just asking you to give us a break. Man, I'm inundated. I've got Ohio Clean Energy here. We have Autoneum here. I don't even know what you're building on Corduroy and Wellendorf. Can anybody tell me what's going on in the corner there, the Deventhal thing? What is gonna go there? We never were even asked, how do we know you're not gonna build nuclear bombs in there? Can anybody tell me what's gonna go in there? Wow, it's a secret.
Mr.
I would think of the investment
do you
that
want
you
me to
get.
answer
Mr.
that?
Major, Mr.
No,
Major, go ahead.
that wasn't our investment. That was a Deventhal and Neuter. And they built a spec building, and I believe they got interest for.
So what are they gonna do there?
No, nobody know. They're building it on speculation. So they're just putting the investment into the building.
Now,
And
let me
it's,
ask you a quick question here then. Now, when you build a building with a permit, you have to have some sort of a number or some sort of a identification that kind of maybe gives you an SIC code or sort of what we're gonna do in that building. I mean, I can't just build this building and tell you that I'm gonna make rubber duckies in here and then I really make ammunition for the military, right? So there's no code, there's no nothing that tells you what they're gonna do in there.
There is a code, and it would permit anything the code
right.
allows. So no, they do not have to
And I'm-
disclose anything,
I'm
other
sorry.
than if they would want to do something other than what the code allows, they would have to come in and request other type of zoning.
And I'm sorry if I sound like I'm a goofball, but I'm passionate. I'm panicking. I'm panicking. I mean, it's literally a big deal to us. Now, you had mentioned maybe buying that over there, that property over there. That would be something everybody consider, but I wouldn't, eminent domain or what you would offer us for that piece of parcel of land would have to be substantial because it's a big investment for me too. I didn't say that offer's off the table. I didn't say I wanted to do that, but I would consider it a legitimate offer. And I'm not here to buy or sell. I'm telling you that I'm a human being also, and I understand that this is a business situation. But what I am saying is please, just consider that little corner there so we can all live in harmony.
We're trying.
I mean, is that a legitimate request? Would you want that in your yard? I mean, would you? No, would you? I mean, would you want to be able to have 5 acres and all of a sudden you have a building where people you don't even know are right up against your land? You know, getting in the trunks of their cars or they're eating their lunch and throwing their garbage out and you got to pick it up when we moved out here thinking we were escaping that. Do I make a valid point?
Say that again.
Do I make any sense on?
You do.
on my
No,
reasoning?
I think you've been very fair.
I've been adamant. I'm pouring my heart out here. I normally don't do this, so thanks for listening.
Thank you, Mr. Lattimore. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else that would like to come up and speak against this zoning change? State your name clearly and your address, please, for the record.
My name is Melanie Minnick and I live at 1906 Lilas. So off of Bay Shore, not too far away. And just like you, I grew up in East Toledo and I do live in a neighborhood, but my husband and I are considering in the next year actually purchasing some acreage either in the city or in the township. And this encroachment that you had mentioned, and I understand the city needs revenue, it seemingly keeps going further and further out or expanding. And I would not feel super comfortable buying any sort of acreage, knowing that it could be anything goes, industrial the next year. Now, that being said, there are people that have been mentioned that live on Wynn Road who just recently built. I am close with one person who is living in one of those houses. When you mentioned that they were informed that zoning would be changing, I thought that was peculiar because I know how passionate she feels about this issue. Unfortunately, she couldn't be here tonight, but if this particular meeting were to be held again, I'm sure she would, because this really, really bothers her. So I asked her, did this happen? Were you informed that the zoning was going to be changing right across the street? She said, no. So I would love to know when this happened. If you can't, I know you can't conjure up a certain date when this was advised to them, but I'd really like to know. That way I can know and she can know as well. That being said, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Mr. Gilmore.
Thank you, Mr. President. All I can tell you is any inquiry I had about those lots, on Wynn Road, I made them aware of that. There would be that the 2025 plan suggested that would be industrial property. Now, I don't know in particular on the person you're talking about, if I talked with her, but I have to tell you, whenever somebody inquired about it, I would let them know.
Okay,
Okay.
Jean Gilmore. So I will forward
Sure.
that on to her.
Yep.
So she can look into it. I do know
Thank
that.
you, Mr. Gilmore. Thank you.
And yes, thank you. I apologize. That if this is approved, she has informed me to communicate that she will be pursuing legal action because this is not something, and I understand what you just said, but had she known this, she wouldn't have built there. And I can't speak for the other folks on Wynn Road, but I have to imagine that that's the case with them as well. I'm not even sure if they're in here. But I appreciate you all taking the time to listen to our concerns. I certainly hope other people will voice theirs as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Melanie. Is there anybody else that wishes to speak against this zoning change? Yes, sir. State your name clearly and your address for the record, please.
Name is Bob Uhas. I live on 5290 Corduroy Road. When you brought this map up, 4555 and 4655 are the additions to the changes, right? Or what's going to be proposed to be changed. You said that it makes perfect sense to change it because of what's already there. So what's going to stop it from going further east? I mean, right now, if we make these changes now, then it might make sense to go further and further and further down. So where does it stop?
It's a good question. I have an answer. I do not have an answer for you on that.
Mr. President,
Mr. Major.
if I may. So the city came up with and I know I'm new here, so, and I do appreciate the comments. This is what makes government great, is the public process.
Right.
The city's, as Mr. Gilmore alluded to earlier and referenced earlier, I should say, the 2025 plan, which is the city's master plan, was formed roughly 18 years ago. And that is where the public process decided, having through many public meetings and iterations of maps and what's important to the city, what's not, and, prioritizing what that future, when I referenced the future land use planning map, that's a tool that's used to plan and grow the city in the way that the citizens came up with. Citizens, administration, elected officials, other agencies, and everybody had a chance to. So, I mean, this has been something that's been in the works
So
for
are
quite some
there,
time. So where does it end? Where the city's land use planning map ends is on Wynn, and I believe just south of Corduroy. Is that- So there is a map, it's on the city's website, to look at what's in there. So that's where it is now, but I will state that the citywide master plan does need an update. It hasn't been updated in probably, since, in almost 20 years. So industry standard is to have it updated once every 5 to 10 years. So that would be the time to sort of voice opinions from the public.
so
on
right
what's-
now, there's no plan in place for, like, say, what's across from my house. There's property across from my house that's been for sale for probably 3 years. And it's been,
It's east of Wynn Road.
I am, yes, east of Wynn Road. So on the north side of Corduroy Road, between Wynn and Stadium.
At one time, there was a company that speculated
Right.
putting a greenhouse up there.
Exactly.
But we couldn't have stopped that because it's zoned agricultural there, and they would have just been able to build. That interest seems to have dissipated because we haven't heard anything from them.
Is that on a master plan somewhere? What's supposed to be going on with that in the future?
Currently, it is zoned residential. So I believe that section. of land-
Agricultural or residential?
I believe it's zoned residential.
Some of it's residential, some of it's agricultural.
I thought it just got changed to agricultural not too long ago
There,
for tax purposes.
well, I
City
think what they
owns
did,
it.
I think what they did, some of that, there's a thing we got that's called, people can put it in an ag district, but it's not a permanent change. But there is some of that is agricultural, some of it is
So
residential.
there is no master plan right now for
There's
that
not.
piece of property.
There's not.
Any idea when that might happen so I can
Well, that's what Mr.
Potentially
Major said.
look-
We're looking to the future to update our whole plan for the city. So in the next few years, we would be updating that. And that's when a lot of we bring in as much public input as we can.
So nothing would happen between now and then?
Whoever owns the property can come and request anything. We couldn't stop them from
Okay.
requesting something. But we, the city, have no intention.
And
of
then I would
anything.
be notified of that if somebody were to purchase that and try to change it.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Is there anybody else that wishes to come forward and speak against the zoning change? Please clearly state your name and address for the record, please.
My name is Cindy Sazeski. If you bring the map back up, please. This one?
That one right there?
Nope. Yes, that's the one. I live at 4919 Corduroy. As you can see where the little line goes. I'm 4919. I work third shift. I sleep during the day. And with this, I still hear the True Blue trucks going. This is going to make it very hard for me to sleep and very hard to work every night because I won't have any sleep. Isn't there any way you could move it away from all those houses? Look at that little block that you have. You're going to buy us all out? You got to think of us. This is, our retirement home. We worked hard for this home. And now I have to have this next to me as I try and sleep every day. And I will be retiring soon, I hope. But right now I'm working every night, 10 to 6 a.m. And this is just unacceptable to have it that close to a child that's autistic, to my brother who just built a house on Wynn Road. This is just crazy to actually do that. Why not go down further where you took the property away from my brother years ago where he wanted to build his house? So he moved up to Wynn, and now you're doing the same thing to him. It's just, you're too close to all those homes that a lot of us have moved into. We have our interests back in our barn, our house, and now I can't even open my windows to sleep at night or sleep during the day. This is very unacceptable to be that close to all those houses unless you plan on, and we did not get any type of notification about this. There was nothing sent to our address. Can you show the letter to me, please? There was nothing given to my neighbor or to me.
Are you speaking in regard to the public hearing occurring?
No, for you turning that into industrial.
Oh, okay.
There was
Did you build that house or was that an existing house?
It was built in 21
Yeah,
years
yeah.
ago.
I think what Mr. Gilmore's talking about is when people came to consider building houses on the property, there, excuse me, they were reminded that there was a very good opportunity this could happen. That's what I'm told anyway.
Which is saying that letter that was given to some of our neighbors, but not us.
Okay.
Only one of our neighbors got that letter to say that this council meeting was taking place. We never got it. We never got it.
Oh, so you didn't get a mailed notice of a public hearing? Okay, that should have happened.
I brought that up
Okay.
last meeting. And, poor mailing. Very poor mailing.
Okay.
100 feet, right?
Pardon me? Is it 500 feet?
300.
300
feet. We have a mailing list. Now, with that being said, the mail sometimes is slow, but we mail them out 10 days prior to this meeting. Okay. 10 days.
We didn't get anything before the first meeting where my husband and my daughter came, and we didn't get anything for this one. In fact, I had to go on the Oregon community site, and somebody that posted it there reminded me that I had to get ready for work and come here.
Right. I'm not disputing that. But I have, and first of all, are you within 300 feet of the property?
She's at 4919.
I
So
can't-
on the-
Okay, well, I have the list.
I'm thinking that.
Okay. We keep the list. I can show it to you afterwards, okay? But again, we mail them out 10 days ahead of time. We try to, Tina, I think for this meeting, we even mailed that out earlier.
Yeah, 30 days.
30 days, okay. Okay.
Thank you, ma'am. Is there anybody else who'd like to come forward and speak for or against this zoning change?
They're not on here.
Hearing none, I would like to close this public hearing. Council, you have any objections to me closing this hearing at this point? Hearing no objections, I will close this public hearing at 8:03. 8:03. And council, I reopen, well, it's still open, but item 190, 2022 for further questions of the administration.
Mr. President,
Mr. Reeves?
I do have a little bit of a concern here for the property that were in the bottom right-hand, bottom left-hand corner. I think it's, 4350.
4315, yes.
Yes. Is that imperative that we need to change that at this time? I mean, is it, I'm sorry? Yeah, but I understand that. But I believe that property affects some people on this, the west side of this map, correct? That, like the gentleman that's sitting in the back, I think Mr. Lattimore, with his, property there.
Only 9 acres.
The 4315 is?
Yes, sir.
Is that, I mean,
Break it off.
what are we,
Still keep that agriculture? I'm sorry, I don't want to.
what is it zoned as of right now?
Right now at this time.
It's,
Mr. Lattimore, thank you. I'm trying to get the administration to, no, please, thank you. What is that, 4315 zoned as right now?
Agricultural, I believe,
And we want to change it
Want to go to CI?
CI.
Is it something that has to be done right now as compared to the project that we're thinking that is to be developed on the eastern most property that we're talking about?
Mr.
Well,
Mayor,
it makes
Mr.
one,
Mayor.
it makes one parcel with all those together. It's kind of hard to make that usable without that property.
The 4315 would go along with the, I don't know what the numbers are. I can't really see them. I got them here, but I think I need a magnifying
it's
glass.
421 and
But
4.
the beigeish color or brownish ones, those are all CI right now.
Mhm.
In the green next to 4315, like Mr. Lattimore's property and the others.
Mhm.
What are his, the bowling alley type properties that Mr. Walmzak sort of coined the phrase? I mean, what are those zoned as
Residential
at this
ag.
point?
Jim,
I think there's.
they're zoned.
As you can see up there, they're in green. That would be agricultural. A1.
Thank you, Mr. Gilmore. Thank you, Marion. I guess a question to go along with Mr. Reeves on this, and I think you make kind of a valid point. How useful is that piece of property at this point in time when the properties to the east of that right now are already CI, correct? The brown ones?
Correct.
The brown ones.
That's correct.
Those are CI. So actually someone can already come in here and do something in it if they want, or they're, but at this point in time, maybe that that small piece of property doesn't mean anything to anybody until someone else would actually come in and then maybe request that. Am I wrong in thinking that way?
Mr. President, that's my point.
Yes, Mr. Reeves, thank you. So I guess that's my thought process on this at the moment.
Understood.
But
Understood.
it's just, it doesn't do anything. It's 9 acres. So,
If I may,
Mr. Thompson,
if I may.
go ahead.
If I may, so
Clarify this for me.
4557 and 4221 are currently vacant. So it's, think about this as a whole. It's not really just that 9-acre box. That 9 acres butts up to that already CI that's vacant. So you create a 15-acre parcel there.
Mr. President, I don't,
Mr. Reeves.
no, please.
Mr. Thompson,
Yeah.
come.
The numbers, please.
No, you're fine.
The numbers don't mean anything because I can't see them.
Right.
What, if you, Mr. Drake, could you give that to Mr.
laser.
Could you please point to the properties that you're talking about?
I'd like to interject just for a second. Terry, when we added that to a CI, it just gives the opportunity when most site selectors are looking for a little bit larger sites, and it makes it more desirable for people, the size.
You're right, not much can go in 9 acres. This intact, quite frankly, this is more workforce parking. And yeah, we would love to keep a buffer around. We don't want to put a building right here next to your property that's terrible for us. But,
Can I say something?
yeah,
Right here would be a great place to break because there's a road right there. You guys have Blue Herring Road or however you pronounce that.
right here.
Yep. That'd be a beautiful place to break it.
Well,
This is the piece of the parcel that her and I and the taxpaying people that live in this little green corner are talking about. That's all residential back in there.
well,
So if you put a parking lot in there, that's worse.
so right here, I don't disagree with you. Some way to say that. These two properties right here are run by a private developer already. They can come in and build another extension of the city, a parking lot, whatever they want. And the city, quite frankly, doesn't have much control over that. It's a private developer.
Would you guys like some photographs of that and just for big, put some color in it?
Pass it all the time.
I've seen, the foundation owns that, very familiar with that property.
This is the land that I took pictures from my perspective on that little piece that we're talking about right here. This is what I see right now. This is where my grandkids play. These are all different views of that land.
Mr. Thompson,
Thank you
that
for doing that.
piece of property in green next to 4315 to the left, how big of a piece of property is that?
Yeah, I'll pass them down.
Is it probably almost the same thing, or?
I can't tell.
Thank
Okay.
you for coming, but the way,
Okay.
the reason why I said that, because I wanted benefit for you guys. is
Unless it
not
continue,
out.
I can't see.
Not to
the
just come
continuation. It looks like that's
Give you-
a bowling alley parcel.
Yeah, so that was where you.
Mr.
Yeah,
President.
that's fine, yeah.
Mr. Major?
If I could jump in and say something about this, the assembly of land here. Yes, those 3 parcels are marketable for a site selector looking to build a 100,000 to 150,000 square foot building for some type of industrial use. That is a site that could be submitted, if it hasn't already been submitted, for an RFI for a lead from Jobs Ohio.
Frame of reference, the
So-
Neuter Delventhal building that's going up on the corner of Corduroy and Lallendorf, that's a 100,000 square foot building. You could put 200 jobs in there.
So to answer Mr. Reeves' question and your question, it is a very marketable piece of property.
Okay.
So for industrial use, it just is. And I don't want to sugarcoat it at all. It is. Just those 3 little parcels there, 15 acres does appeal to somebody in terms of industrial growth. So.
Mr. Reeves, does that answer your question?
Thanbe Mr. Major.
Sort of, but-
Mr. Roman, did you have something to say?
I'm sorry.
No, please let me, thank you. The beige property that the 3, yes, right there. That's where you're talking about our, would you say 100,000 square foot?
So Fresenius is currently right here. This is owned by a private developer. Foundation owns this. These parcels would create about a 15-acre box. You could put a 100,000 square foot spec building on.
Okay, just for reference, what would the buffering be to the neighbors that own the other bowling alley type properties?
I'll defer to
Mr.
Mr. Gilmore.
President, I can answer that if you'd like me to. Mr. President.
Mr. Gilmore.
Yes, thank you. When industrial building abuts a residential property, there's a 50-foot buffer that's required.
Thank you, Mr. Gilmore. Mr. Roman, did you have something?
Well, and I was, two things. I was gonna mention the buffer requirement. I've been to a lot of zoning hearings and that seems to be always as it come up. And I respect the gentleman, making his argument for his property. But you have other properties at the corner of Corduroy and Wynn, they'd be the same thing. So I think you gotta consider that across the board. So buffering is important. They have, I can tell you, and I think the hardest part about economic development is the people coming in, Jobs Ohio and all that, they're looking for these giant parcels. I mean, it's just crazy. And so a lot of times if it's a smaller parcel and there's homes on it, it seems to be less attractive to combine that with other property. It's these bigger properties that they were looking at. And the idea of connecting Windscape to Parkway Road was that would be the main feed for traffic. It was those big properties that front on that road. That was probably the original request. That's how, right or wrong, that's how it got to this point. So that's it.
Thank you, Mr. Roman. Council, any other questions or comments?
Mr. President.
Mr. Horniak?
Looking at, I've got a couple of pieces in this and then something I just, want to add and share with everybody here. So in the parcel that we're talking about, the 4315, and again, if I'm not seeing that right, it's time for an eye exam. I do know. The parcel in 4315, if I'm looking at the northernmost piece of that property, butting up to the east as it kind of corners down. Oh yeah, I'm really bad with these. Right into this corner. Okay, so to the right of the arrow, if you will. It looks like that north-south boundary of that property does not align with the north-south boundary of the orange property to the right. Is that fair to say?
Yeah.
Okay. So can it be created that not only is that part of the buffer, can that be parceled off to create that space that gives more of an opportunity for green space through that?
Theoretically, yes, if I
Okay.
may.
All right, and in practice, I'm just
theoretically,
asking,
yes. It's just-
if it can be done. So the other part of that is, so the two to the east of that, which are currently in orange zoned as commercial industrial, essentially those 2 6-acre plots are useless for development because it's 6 acres between the two of them. If that parcel is 9 acres and the whole collection of them would be 15, by my math, that means those 2 parcels are 6 acres.
Roughly.
Fair? 6 acres, I gotta think is,
They're two different sizes, it looks like.
yeah, it looks like they're,
Again, we're looking at a
2.5, 3.5.
parcel map. If you go out there, again, Fresenius sits at, I think it's 555. So they
Mhm.
have all that land to the south. So they run together. They're owned by the same private developer.
Mhm. But the
So-
2 parcels immediately to the south are 2 separate parcels owned by a private developer today, correct?
Correct.
And they're 6 acres combined, if my math is good.
Yes, but those 6 acres roll into the Fresenius property.
To where if they had the opportunity to acquire property from Fresenius to develop that,
It's the same developer.
okay, but you understand what I'm saying? 6 acres as a parcel or as 2 parcels, if 9 acres is a challenge, 6 acres is a bigger challenge.
I agree. And mathematically on a parcel map, that's correct. Realistically, that's not how it looks in person. There's no
All right.
lines,
I understand, but you don't want to change the direction because you're not following where I'm going with this. That parcel, those 3 parcels are somewhat undevelopable as 3 parcels, but as one, they are marketable. Fair?
Yes.
Okay.
That's
Point I'm
exactly
trying to
correct.
make to that, and no disrespect, Mr. Lattimore, to what you're saying. I just want to kind of piece that in mentally for all of us. Those 3 parcels become 15 acres and that becomes a desirable area. Correct. If we go into the CI zoning even at this time in that parcel, and I'll speak to the other ones in a moment, it goes into the advanced manufacturing, which has the increased buffering and all the things that we tried to put into that, which would make that a more aesthetically pleasing business that would go into that area. My
50-foot bu-
question.
The 50-foot buffer.
Right, the 50-foot buffer and, we've got some design issues, 60 feet, all those types of things that we've tried to do. But my question is, can we create something around the perimeter of that property which does a little bit better scaping for hidden visibilities, those types of things? So that's one question I want to come back to. But the other one, I'm still hung up on the concept of the 4701 property on Corduroy being commercial industrial versus advanced manufacturing. I still am challenged by that. I think it should all be advanced manufacturing unless there's a specific reason why we wouldn't. I don't know why we would make that CI and the other 2 parcels advanced manufacturing as opposed to creating one larger block of all the same zoning.
Thank you, Mr. Horniak. Mr. Major, would you speak to that or?
He said he
Mr.
would
President.
prefer to.
Mr. Wallenczak.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Horniak, when you were discussing the 4315, the lower left green, did you think that it was going into the advanced manufacturing or just regular CI? Because they're.
The lower left would be advanced manufacturing.
No, that's a CI.
That's that's one of the 2 CIs.
That would change to CI, just like the adjoining properties on Blue Huron Drive.
Okay, and yeah,
That's
I'm
still-
sorry.
I just wanted to make sure you were.
Thank you. I was misreading that. So that would
Right.
be CI.
Right.
So
And that is.
obviously even more challenge if it's not the advanced manufacturing, because that doesn't have the same buffering and the same.
It's still.
It's still
50
50 foot.
It does.
It does.
Still has 50 foot,
50 foot.
but all the other things in advanced manufacturing no longer apply. The things in CI apply for zoning piece. Okay.
Mhm.
Right.
Okay. The one thing I would like to say, Mr. President, wrapping up, I think that kind of completes the question outside of the, why CI on the one property there instead of the block as advanced manufacturing. I do want to come back to that. The one thing I would say to everybody that's here and anybody who might be watching online, this is probably one of the more challenging things that anybody sitting up here has to deal with. We've looked at areas before that was agricultural, that was, I'll say, vast open spaces that had opportunities to develop as a community. The answer was, no, we don't like that idea. We were told, look at the things you already have zoned and designed for industrial commercial, which is this area. 18 years ago, a group of people sat down and said, if we want to develop something, let's keep it in this area. So no matter where or what, there's always somebody who's affected. When the apartments went in on Navarre, we had people that says it blocked their view of the park from the neighborhood to the south of there. There is always something in there. Years ago, I sat in those seats, stood at that podium before I was a councilman, speaking against a business development in my residential neighborhood. It's a business operating in a residential neighborhood. It's there. So it's, happening. It's already in. It's been there for years. While I challenged that at the time, what I came to find out is that they became a pretty good neighbor. They fit in, they blended in, they did well. It's not in the same kind of sense. Okay. But I guess my point would be is every time we look at the discussions of development, there's always challenges. There is always someone who's going to leave here unhappy. There is always somebody who, feels that nobody listened to them, nobody thought about them. We've all had, I shouldn't say we all, my own personal experience. I've had those same things. And I've stood out there and I said, I just can't believe we would do this. Sometimes it makes sense in what's in there. Like I said, having planned this 18 years ago was not part of the committee. Obviously, we're talking about, let's do some updates with this. But at that time, the community kind of spoke to the leaders at the time and said, this is the area we want to see the commercial and industrial development. We brought in advanced manufacturing to try to lessen that. So I guess in no short sense, what I'm saying is, I absolutely understand what you're saying, because I've sat in those seats and I stood at that podium myself. But in a lot of cases, this is where we as a community, as a group 18 years ago came together and says, what makes sense? Are there some things we could do to address how that looks and what that, I live just to the south of there. I see all those facilities that you guys are talking about, they're out my backyard. I see them every time I go into my neighborhood. I see them every time I drive through there. Every single time. Can they coexist with what we're trying to do? If you go into a lot of different areas in Perrysburg and so many other places, land masses are tough to find. So when you have something and somebody wants to develop, as a community, it's the responsible thing for ask the question, can we, should we? Sometimes the community says no. Sometimes the community says this makes sense. The last time we looked at this is where our community said we got to try to make sense. But I do believe we can do some things. And I don't know whether we alter the legislation as proposed tonight in regards specifically to the one property, but I also like us to consider the advanced manufacturing in the third parcel that is to the west, because that's going to create, I think, a better neighbor to the community. And creating those 15 acres, I agree. I see the validity in that because, like I said, 2 parcels, total 6 acres, you got nothing. 15 acres makes it an attractive opportunity. As advanced manufacturing, that I think makes it a better neighbor.
Agreed.
So maybe we consider that as advanced manufacturing, knowing the Plan Commission has done their work to override. Obviously, we got to meet a certain threshold as far as votes, but I'd ask the same on the CI property to the east, which is the left side of the green on the right, if you will, from commercial into advanced manufacturing. So that whole cluster is all the same. And again, prefacing it on, just because we're changing the zoning doesn't mean the land use is changing. As of today, I don't know if anybody knows any different, but I can speak from my own eyes. I know of no company that signed papers to come into that area. I know of no company who's committed to come into the other area. This is just creating the opportunity. So when someone says, you got 15 acres cobbled together where we can put something, he can pick up the phone and say, yes, I do. So the land use doesn't change until somebody actually buys it. So with that, I mean, I guess I'd like to hear council's input to my thoughts on that is, should the 3 parcels to the right, all 3 be considered as advanced manufacturing, or should we consider that in our position this evening? And do we need to change the one on the left or to the west, if you will, that would be advanced manufacturing?
Thank you,
Which
Mr. Horniak.
which would require you to pretty much do all 3 in advanced manufacturing to
Mr.
make that
President.
parcel. So with that, I'll
President,
end.
after Mr. Reeves.
I agree with Mr. Horniak 110%. I think it should be advanced manufacturing if we do anything with it.
Thank you, Mr. Reeves. Well, the question I had on this, and here's what I need to hear, I guess. That, what is that, 4701? Yeah, 4701?
Correct.
Yes. And that's the property that we're talking about at the moment. Are we making that commercial industrial because it makes the other 2 parcels next to it more attractive?
No.
Is that why?
Which 2 parcels to the west?
4701 to the 2 orange
The
to the
2 parcels
west.
to the west.
To
The
two
reason for the
parcels to the
CI.
west.
And
The reason-
Mr. President,
Is that why we want to make that CI? Because it increases that
Simply-
commercial industrial presence there versus the advanced manufacturing. But I do agree, I think the advanced manufacturing is more friendly.
Simply put.
Mr. President.
Mr. Walmsley.
Thank you, Mr. President. To that point, I wanted to ask Mr. Thompson, the people that are calling you, how critical is that stretch that is, I can't read the numbers.
4701.
4701, I'm sorry. I need glasses, I'm sorry. how critical is that portion of it to be CI versus advanced manufacturing in the calls that you are receiving?
Project to project. It depends
So
what the
it-
acreage they're looking for. If a company's looking for
So
30 acres, it's
It
not.
wouldn't necessarily hamstring you from getting people to want to develop there.
Project
It
to
depends
project
on, depends on
basis.
the project, whoever that is at that given day that gives you a telephone call.
And if I may.
Yes, please.
The reason why for CI on this one and invest, as explained before, like advanced manufacturing on the others, advanced manufacturing, there's more of a border on residential sides and the border on Corduroy Road with the one that we had proposed to be CI is minimal and it still matches what's to the west of that. So it allows for more flexibility. That was it, business decision.
Thanks,
And-
Mr.
More
Mayor.
and I-
flexible and it's away from everything.
And I will say the buffering along Wynn Road, and Mr. Roman, correct me if I'm wrong, that our plan is to move the ditch away from the road, build a mound like it, which is north of Cedar Point, so that there would be a mound with trees planted at the top, so that would buffer Wynn even further from any development there, because we got to move the ditch off the roadway.
That's correct.
That is correct, and I don't know if this thing's working.
Mr. Roman?
Yeah, it's correct that along Wynn Road, that was the plan to relocate a Heckman ditch and put in mounding and so on. And my suggestion is, in general, on any city-owned land that's involved here, or economic development, is to provide more buffer where you can, when it's up against the residents.
And for what it's worth, these companies don't want to be in the backyard either. I mean, they express the same concern of that. They don't want to deal with the negative term complaining neighbors, rightfully so. But they want to be as far away from you guys as well. It's better business practice. It's more ethical for them. So again, for what that's worth, every company that me and Mr. Mazer have been on a site visit with, they inquire about all the homes that are around this property. So again, they want to be a good neighbor.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson.
Mr. President,
Mr. Reeves?
question for probably Mr. Gilmore, I would assume. The properties that are just to the west of 4701, that last green property, and then the three of them, the two bigger ones?
Yeah.
Yeah. The two bigger ones and the three smaller ones next to, is that Blue Heron Drive there? What are those agricultural right now, or?
Everything green is agricultural.
Well, I have to tell you, there's two zoning designations up there. The brown is CI and the green is agricultural. Okay? Green grass.
So. I know something's wrong with the mics, but I know right now I'm in agreement exactly with what Mr. Horniak had brought up by having those all advanced manufacturing, if that is what we are choosing to do tonight.
Mr. Zale?
Thank you, Mr. Reeves. Ms. Purpura?
If it's council's desire to change what has been previously proposed by the planning commission and approved by the planning commission, council cannot just change it tonight. They would have to deny it. It would have to go back to the planning commission.
We can refer back, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, you can refer it back. Can we can,
Mr. Wallenjack?
can we alter with 6 votes?
Conditions,
Conditions, not.
correct.
Maybe it was on too long.
So, Mr. President, if I may?
Mr. Horniak, go ahead.
So I guess my question would be, let's say for Ms. Purpura, the ordinance is written up as an all or nothing ordinance. If we wanted to, and I guess I'm going to ask Ms. Purpura to weigh on this, but I'll ask the other council members to weigh in and see if they support the concept, to refer the parcel, which is, I think it's 4315, if I'm following the red arrows right, 4315, which is the one in the lower left corner of the map that we're looking at, to refer that back to them for consideration of making that advanced manufacturing and potentially the two properties in the orange immediately to the right or to the east, for those three to be considered.
We can't do that. We don't own those.
Okay,
We can't do that.
we can't do that.
The ones in the brown, that would have to be agreed to by
Okay,
the
but-
property owner. If
but we
they
don't-
agreed to it,
We don't own the ones to the east either, or to the east.
yes.
We own one, we have options on
Right.
one.
We
We do
have
not own the
agreements on
third.
those. Though. We have
We have
no
agreements on all
objection.
three of them?
We own the first one and we have an agreement and a no objection on the three green ones, starting at Wynn Road.
And do we know if we would have objection for considering the two to the west to be considered to advanced manufacturing?
That we have no idea that, do you know, Alec, do you know who owns those?
Two of those, so 4315.
It owns to the east of those. He's talking to.
The two
of those
properties, the
three
6
going
acres we
down
were talking
Blue.
about
This is-
previously.
Would there be objection?
No, I'm just saying, do we know who owns them?
Yes, we do.
Okay,
You can go on the Lucas County Auditor's website at any.
All right, but,
point.
all right, so
okay,
I
so,
don't know. I would
so
say
if
that
we
they
referred,
probably would have an objection to that.
if we referred that back to planning commission for review,
Mhm.
we can ask that question to find out if there's a concern or a challenge, because they are CI today, and if you bought property as that, I get that. But if what they're considering there is in line with our advanced manufacturing, there may not be an objection whatsoever. That would, I think, give the surrounding folks, I think, a little better chance at a better neighbor and a better aesthetic to that particular thing. So my question would be is if we want to refer that back to the planning commission, can we separate that out from this ordinance? Can we change the property on the right of the green to advanced manufacturing from CI as requested through this? But my guess is we cannot. We'd have to refer that back as well to the planning commission. Do we have to deny, do we have to basically put this up and vote it down for that to refer back, or can we just refer this, Ms.
I
Flora?
think we can just refer it.
Does that make sense, what
I
I'm
think we
trying to
can-
get to?
We should just be able to.
Procedurally, what do we have to do here if we want to consider it? And my question to council members would be, do you support that concept? Or we can move ahead as is and everybody votes the way they want to?
Mr. President, Mr.
Ms.
Horniak,
Purpura, Ms. Purpura.
the council has to make a decision within a certain period of time. So the council would either have to approve it or deny it. And if it's denied, then it goes back and we start the process over with what you are suggesting. We can't just refer it back
Okay.
due to our time limit.
So we do either have to approve or deny with a vote today.
Yes.
And because we can make alterations to the conditions, but not the zoning request, the zoning change requested,
Correct.
we have to either vote yes or no.
Correct.
Okay, so we can't just send this back because we legally have to act tonight.
Yes.
But
30
if
to
we
45
choose to have this reconsidered, then voting no on this ordinance would give us the opportunity to send that back for reconsideration.
Start the process over, really.
Yes. Okay,
Thank you, Mr. Horniak.
thank you.
Council, any other questions or comments? Hearing none. Council, I will assign item 190, 2022 as ordinance 190, 2022 and ask Ms. Evans to read it in the record.
Authorizing a change in the district map for properties described as 4315 Corduroy Road, parcel 44-11277 and 4701 Corduroy Road, parcel 44-10204 from A1 Agricultural District to CI Commercial Industrial District. For property described as 4713 Corduroy Road, parcel 44-10114 from A1 Agricultural District to Advanced Manufacturing District, for a portion of the property described as 700 North Wind Road, parcel 44-09984, from mixed-use A1 Agricultural District and CI Commercial Industrial District to Advanced Manufacturing District.
Council,
Mr. President,
Mr. Reeves.
I have a quick question here first before we take our vote or anything. Now, if this gets denied and it goes back to the plan commission,
It goes nowhere. If it's denied, it goes nowhere. It goes in the garbage.
and then they just start over?
Start over.
Okay, can we put? Okay. Once that happens, can we make suggestions or how do we make suggestions to have the 4 green properties that we're talking about and possibly the 2 little ones that sort of look like North Dakota and South Dakota, I guess, if you want to look them, or Wyoming and Colorado, make them all advanced manufacturing? How, who takes care of that process
Well,
once it goes to the plan commission?
well, Mr. President,
Mr.
Mr. Reeves, well, of course, being that we administratively have submitted this, we hear all that's going on in here. So we would incorporate that. We'd be foolish not to, because our objective would be to have it pass. So we certainly aren't going to want to throw something up that would fail. So we would.
So it comes from our administration, correct? Back to the
We
plan commission?
administratively put input with the, remember, the Economic Development Foundation is an arm of the city. And
Correct.
so we all work together in this process. So we would be putting that together in our application because our ultimate goal is running stuff up just to have it fail is not our objective.
Understood.
All right.
But that was what my gist of the question was, who does who's in charge of the process of it? And it would be our administration.
We would start with a resolution like we initially did with this one.
Correct. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Reeves.
Mr. President, over here.
Mr. Wallen.
Thank you, Mr. President. Can I make a suggestion that we make sure that every property owner on that block receives a letter, even if they're outside of 300 feet?
Yes, we can.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wallen.
And we figured if that you guys were beyond the 300, you were not on the list. You were beyond the 300 feet,
300
so
feet.
you were not on.
We'll
the
take care of
list. But we can certainly make sure that gets sent out.
Okay, Council, I'm looking for a motion.
Mr. President,
Mr. Horniak.
I move for passage of ordinance 190 of 2022.
Thank you, Mr. Horniak.
Second.
Second by Mr. Reeves. Thank you, Mr. Reeves. Ms. Evans, you take a roll call vote of council.
Mr. Horniak,
No, with a recommendation for referral back as we discussed this evening.
Mr. Reeves,
No.
Mr. Dabish,
Yes.
Mr. Drake,
No.
Mrs. Powell,
No.
Mr. Wallenzeck,
No.
Mr. Zale,
No. Thank you, council. Ordinance 190, 2022 fails with 7 or 6 yays and 1 yay. Council, next,
And just, I want to, did I say something?
you may, Mr. Mayor. Go ahead.
And
Before we go on.
it doesn't, we do not take a referral of any sort. It will be a reapplication.
Right.
It'll be a reapplication.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. President,
Mr. Reeves?
if you would like to make the.
Yes, yes, Mr. Reeves. If anybody here for the public hearing does not want to stay for the rest of council business, you can leave now if you'd like. Council, the next item for consideration for this evening, we need to add items 191 through 194, 2022 to this week's agenda. Council.
So moved, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Horniak. Second by Ms. Paula. Council, any objections? Hearing none. Items 191 through 194 are added to this week's agenda. And the first item, 191, 2022, is presented by Mayor Michael Safarian and City Administrator Joel Major. And I will defer to Mr. Major.
Thank you, Mr. President. sure I'm on the right page here. Nick, is this,
Budget.
Yeah, I can speak to this. This is to approve the budget, basically making the appropriations and all the interfund and transfers on an as needed basis for next year. We spoke about this at length in the budget hearings over the last month. We had four hour-long meetings about this. We took all your guys' questions, and if there are any issues or any more questions, feel free to ask, but we spoke about this at length. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Roman. Council, any questions or comments? Hearing none, I will assign item 191, 2022 as ordinance 191, 2022, and ask Ms. Evans to read into the record.
Making appropriations and authorizing interfund transfers on an as-needed basis for necessary expenditures for personal services, other expenditures, and capital improvement programs of the City of Oregon, Ohio for the fiscal year beginning January 1, 2023, and ending December 31, 2023, and declaring an emergency.
Council.
Mr. President,
Mr. Horniak.
I move for passage of ordinance 191 of 2022 as an emergency measure.
Thank you, Mr. Horniak. Second by Mr. Davish. Thank you, Mr. Davish. Ms. Evans, would you take a roll call vote of council, please?
Mr. Horniak?
Yes.
Mr. Davish? Mr. Drake?
Yes.
Mrs. Pollock?
Yes.
Mr. Reeves?
Yes.
Mr. Wallensack? Mr. Zale?
Yes. Thank you, council. Ordinance 191 passes with 6 yeas and 0 nays. Next item up for consideration is item 192, 2022, which is presented by Mayor Michael Safarian and Public Service Director Paul Roman, and I will defer to Mr. Roman.
Thank you, Mr. President. This ordinance is needed to purchase chemicals for the water treatment plant operations over the next 12 months. The chemicals and vendors listed in section 1 were the lowest and best bids respectively. And the bid and the bid review is included in Exhibit A. And I mentioned a week ago that these bids would come in. They are still high. And I think, I think we do have to look at our rate structure as well for water in the next coming year. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Roman. Council, any questions or comments regarding item 192? Hearing none, I will assign item 192, 2022 as ordinance 192, 2022, and ask Ms. Evans to read it into the record.
Authorizing the mayor, finance director, and director of public service to enter into contracts with Bonded Chemicals Incorporated, 2645 Charter Street, Columbus, Ohio, Carmos Lime Incorporated, 11 Stanwick Street, 21st floor, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, JCI Jones Chemicals Incorporated, 18,000 Payne Street, Riverview, Michigan, and Shannon Chemical Corporation, P.O. Box 376, Melbourne, Pennsylvania, for 2022 water and wastewater treatment chemicals and materials bid and declaring an emergency.
Council.
Mr. President,
Mr. Davish.
I move for passage of ordinance 192 of 2022 and declaring an emergency.
Thank you, Mr. Davish.
Second.
Second by Ms. Paulo. Thank you, Ms. Paulo. Ms. Evans, would you take a roll call vote of council, please?
Mr. Davish?
Yes.
Mrs. Paula?
Yes.
Mr. Drake?
Yes.
Mr. Horniak?
Yes.
Mr. Reeves?
Yes.
Mr. Zale?
Yes, thank you, council. Ordinance 192, 2022 passes with 6 yeas and 0 nays. Next item up for consideration is also being presented by the mayor and the public service director, Paul Roman. Item 192, 2022, and I will defer to Mr. Roman.
Thank you, Mr. President. This ordinance is needed to pay American Enterprise for a truck repair for a street department dump truck. The list of repair work and the cost breakdown are included in Exhibit A. And as we had mentioned in our budget meeting tonight, this is an expense over $25,000 and it requires an ordinance for it. So, but I'd happy again to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Roman. Council, any questions regarding item 193, 2022? Hearing none, I will assign item 193, 2022 as ordinance 193, 2022, and ask Ms. Evans to read it into the record.
Authorizing the mayor, director of public service, and finance director to issue payment to American Enterprises Incorporated 5508 Navarre Avenue, Oregon, Ohio, for providing parts and labor for major engine repair of a 2006 International 7400 dump truck, Unit 8, used by the Street Division in the Department of Public Service in an amount not to exceed $26,290.45 and declaring an emergency.
Council.
Mr. President,
Mr. Drake.
I move for item 193-2022, declaring it as an emergency and pass.
Thank you, Mr. Drake. Second by Mr. Reeves. Is that Mr. Reeves?
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Reeves. Ms. Evans, you take a roll call vote of council, please.
Mr. Drake?
Yes.
Mr. Reeves?
Yes.
Mr. Davish?
Yes.
Mr. Horniak?
Yes.
Mrs. Pollock?
Yes.
Mr. Zale?
Yes. Thank you, council. Ordinance 193, 2022 passes with 6 yeas and 0 nays. The last item for consideration this evening is also presented by the mayor and Fire Chief Clayton O'Brien. It is item 194, 2022, and I will go to Chief O'Brien.
Thank you, Mr. President. This ordinance is to switch the fire department's billing company for EMS billing. The EMS billing is collected by a third party, and we are currently with Medicount, but this ordinance is asking to replace them with Acumed billing. This process was already in the works prior to my start date here. But if you have any specific questions, we're happy to answer. But Mark, Assistant Chief Mullins did do all the work on that.
Thank you, Chief. Are we switching because it's cheaper, or are we switching because it's more accurate or better service, or both?
I would say both. So it is cheaper and it is better. I am very familiar with this, with Acumed billing, as I've worked with them previously at other locations. But it is cheaper and a better quality service, we believe.
I see Mr. Roman's pretty happy about the,
Yeah.
yeah.
Mr. Roman, I'd like to play poker with you sometime. You have no poker face whatsoever.
Council, any other questions or comments regarding item 194? Hearing none, I will assign item 194, 2022 as ordinance 194, 2022, and ask Ms. Evans to read into the record.
An ordinance authorizing the City of Oregon Fire and Rescue Department to enter into an agreement with Acumed Billing Incorporated, P.O. Box 2122, Riverview, Michigan, establishing a working relationship to provide third-party billing services to meet the needs of the Oregon Fire Department and declaring an emergency.
Council.
Mr. President,
Ms. Pauloff.
I move for passage of ordinance 194 of 2022 and declaring an emergency.
Thank you, Ms. Pauloff.
Second.
Second by Mr. Davish. Thank you, Mr. Davish. Ms. Evans, would you take a roll call vote of council on item 194?
Mrs. Pollock?
Yes.
Mr. Davish?
Yes.
Mr. Drake?
Yes.
Mr. Horniak?
Yes.
Mr. Reeves?
Yes.
Mr. Zale?
Yes, thank you, council. Ordinance 194, 2022 passes with 6 yeas and 0 nays. And now I will move to the mayor's report.
Thank you, Mr. President. I do have one retirement to announce. After 22 years, Sue Hopkins has decided to retire, and she has requested her last day to be February 28th, 2023. And I'd ask council's concurrence in accepting the desires of Sue Hopkins to retire once again, February 28th, 2023.
Council.
Mr. President.
Oh, go ahead, Steve.
Mr. Davish.
I concur with the mayor. Oh, I'm sorry.
Second.
Second by Mr. Davish. Thank you, council. Is there any objection? Hearing none, Mayor, council does concur with accepting the retirement of Ms. Hopkins.
Okay, with that, I would conclude my report.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Major.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just thank you for being patient with Nick and I on our first budget. And we'll hope to make improvements for next year so that it's easier to present and easier to read for everybody. That's all I have. Thank you.
Ms. Pecora.
No report, Mr. President.
Thank you, Ms. Pecora. Mr. Roman.
No report.
Thank you, Mr. Roman. Mr. Reeves.
No report from my standing committee, but I would like to, I know it's just going to be an easy question for Mr. Roman to answer. I've had some people that have contacted me about the Navarre-Coy intersection, and like with the northbound, southbound lanes there on Coy, with the right turn. When will that intersection become fully functional?
And the traffic lights that are currently there, are they going to be changed onto the poles instead of the
Yeah.
lines draped across?
Yeah. What,
Thank you.
Mr. Roman?
Yeah, Mr. President, Mr. Reeves, yeah, the delay in this project is obviously a lot of things in terms of particular items, and the traffic lights is one of them, and the decorative poles that they'll hang on. So those will come in March. So right now we have what we have to get through the winter. And I think the problem with the right turn lanes is just that the U-turns that people can make, and we got to have the proper signage for that. So I did talk to Mr. Schultz and Mr. Henniger to see if we can get some other type of signage that would still allow for that operation, because 3 months still a while yet. So
Yeah, I figured that's what the answer was, but I
Yeah.
just wanted to put on the record. So
okay, thank you.
nothing further. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Reeves. Thank you, Mr. Roman. Mr. Drake?
No report.
Thank you, Mr. Drake. Mr. Wallensack?
Thank you, Mr. President. And Council, I apologize. I stepped away. Mr. Lattimore had some questions for me, and I wanted to address his questions prior to him leaving. So I apologize. I missed some votes on the floor, Council. I want to thank Council and the administration. Over the last month, we had multiple meetings on our budget. I think it's a good budget, well thought of. I appreciate the information that was provided to Council during those budget hearings, both from Nick and Joel. So thank you very much for what you guys have done in kind of laying that out and maybe explaining some stuff to us that ease some of our concerns. So with that, nothing further. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wallensack. Mr. Davish?
I got no report, but I'd like to wish everybody Merry Christmas and Happy New Year.
Thank you, Mr. Davish. Ms. Paula?
Thank you, Mr. President. First of all, we had our contest winners, and I would like to thank the fire and police for judging. You guys did an incredible job. For the Winter Wonder Lights, the house on on Hazelton won. And a lady named Rhonda won the tree contest. And this event was reached by 60,000 people. And I encourage all of you, get out before the snow hits. Get out and see the lights, because they're really, really nice. Also, too, with the inclement weather coming and with this being a holiday weekend, I really do want to extend my appreciation and gratitude for all the city services that will be on call this weekend. Police will be 24 hours a day, fire 24 hours a day. We'll have the streets department, water distribution. It's gonna get bitterly cold and we don't know what the snow is gonna be like. But since it's a holiday weekend, it's gonna be taking them away from family functions. And I personally want to reach out to each department, thanking them and showing them that they are so much appreciated for what they do. And Merry Christmas and Happy New Year to everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Paula. Ms. Horniak?
Briefly, first of all, building on what Ms. Paulson said, I cannot remember in any of my 54 years of being in Oregon, this many houses and places decorated. It really is cool to see, to enjoy that. So I guess kudos to all the residents of Oregon for really getting involved and turning on Christmas spirit this year. It's a lot of fun driving around. From the economic development side, I guess just a comment in tonight's actions and discussions. I know that a lot of us as council members and some of us in the public, you know, we hear a lot of times, and someone said it tonight, oh, it's a done deal. Oh, it's a done deal. What you saw tonight is how council and the administration works. This is how things get done. There's a process, it gets looked at, there's another process, then there's a third process. Passed through one, suggested by another said, I think we can sharpen this down a little bit. So for everybody sitting up here, and for those who participate in that, these are the days where you're proud to do what we do, even though we turn something down. This is how the system works. And for those that question how things work, this is how it works. So I'm very proud of our actions tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Horniak. And I have nothing for my standing committee. I just want to thank Mr. Wallensack. I think he did a very good job on presenting the budget this year. And I think today's meeting we got a lot done in today's meeting, actually. Didn't look like we're going to have much to do. We've got a lot done. So thank you for that. And I want to wish everybody a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, especially a safe one for everyone. We do not have anybody else signed in to speak tonight, so I will seek a motion to adjourn. Thank you, Mr. Reeves. Second by Mr. Davish. Council, are there any objections? This meeting's adjourned.
That's okay.
Quick question.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Oh, the one that's been in the finance meetings, yeah. See ya. Mhm. Okay, those are not posted, from any of the committee meetings. Committee of the whole, yes, but not committee meeting. Okay. Right, if she wants audio,
so they're recorded, but it's not
yes,
transcribed.
yes. Yeah, they're recorded, but it's not transcribed. If she's looking for something in particular or whatever, she can let me know. And I can always back her up something on a CD or something.
As I was talking to her, she mentioned, I was looking for like the committees, different committees to, kind of read up on what they have. And she goes, I can't find any place on the website. I said, I can tell you, I haven't looked for anything in the website, so I wouldn't know any different.
It should be under council. Yeah, let me just see real quick if I can
Well, I
see
see
it.
our councils,
Uh-huh.
but never say the finance committee, waters and streets committee, or, whatever those different things are.
Yeah.
Hey, how you doing, man?
She had just asked, where can I find that?
I saw you sitting back there
Know whether
too.
they were transcribed or whether it was just voice recorded.